In a parallel universe, much like our own, one man sought to master both space and money. His name, Dr. Dividend, his dream, to travel the galaxies and fund his research without going broke. His problem? He knew rocket science, but not compound interest.
Bottom court stabilizer, 100,000, anti-gravity housing, another 50,000. Maybe the real black hole is my bank account.
Desperate for cash, the good doctor decided to outsmart Wall Street the only way he knew how, by inventing something smarter than he was.
The mission is to shine the light into the darkness.
What's going on, y'all? This is Just for Stocks and Giggles, the show where we talk about stocks and have some fun doing it. I'm Bull.
And I'm Bear. We have a great episode for you all today. This is our Building a Portfolio episode 1. And today we'll be talking about actually how we're building our stock portfolio. And I'll pass it back to Bull to give you guys a quick disclaimer before we jump in.
Yeah, so as we go through this show, we'll be sharing our portfolio with you and letting you guys, see full transparency into what we're doing, the trades we're making, and what we're doing in order to try and build wealth. And just a quick disclaimer, this is really for entertainment purposes and educational purposes, but we're not providing stock advice or anything like that. So always do your own research and make sure you're well informed before you do anything like this on your own. Back to Bear for a breakdown of our portfolio.
Yeah, so I'll give you guys a breakdown, and we want to be transparent with. That's one of the cool things about our show. We want to be transparent with how much we're investing and how our money is growing, whether it's going down or going up. Because when you're investing in stocks, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, but it's about long-term growth, long-term wealth. So our plan with our portfolio is that we started with $2,000. At first, we thought about doing $1,000, but we decided on $2,000 because we use the Robinhood platform, and for that platform, at $2,000, you can start using margin. I won't go too deep into what margin is if you're not familiar with it, but we will get into that in a later episode. But we started with $2,000, and then we add $100 to that portfolio every month. So right now, we have a total of $2,564, give or take. And that's where our portfolio is now. And then over this season and the following and the seasons to come, you'll be able to see how our portfolio is growing and how we're doing. So I'm going to give a breakdown of our stocks and what is within our stock portfolio. But before I do that, I want to throw it back to Bull just to talk a little bit about how much stocks can cost for anybody that's new. How much it costs to actually buy a stock and get started.
Definitely. So, quick little anecdote. When I first started doing this type of thing, there was this commission attached to every single trade you made. So when I was a little kid, I had, $50 in my bank account that I wanted to invest in stocks with. And I remember I bought GE for $25 and I paid a $9.99 commission. And then when I sold it, I paid another $9.99 commission. It also went down in price by about $5. So I lost almost half my money to commissions, and it really kept me out of the market. Versus today, practically anyone can invest with any amount of money. If you have $5, there's almost every platform is commission free, and you can buy fractional shares. So there's really no reason to not get started, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason. And as I go through our stocks that are in our portfolio, keep in mind that we will break down these specific stocks as we go throughout the season. So even today, we'll talk about a few of our stocks. But I want to give you guys just a high level view of everything we have in our portfolio. And you'll notice that everything in our portfolio is technology focused. So that's the focus of our portfolio. But you can invest in whatever you want to. This is just a guide and just something that we're doing. But really, it's all about you getting in there and making your money work. So let me go through what we have real quick. All right, so in no particular order, our stocks are Reddit, MongoDB, Comfort Systems, AMD, NVIDIA, Shopify, Alphabet Class or Google, Apple 11, Take Two, Taiwan Semiconductors, Opera, Lam Research Corp, Tempest AI, CrowdStrike, Duolingo, D-Wave Quantum, BYD Company, Microsoft, Palo Alto Networks, Nebius Group, Uber, Mercado Libre, Meta, Netflix, Spotify, CoreWeave, Rigetti, InnoData, IonQ, and NewScale.
Yeah, and like Bear mentioned, we're going to be taking a dive into some of these stocks today, and those would be the semiconductor stocks, right?
That's right. That's right. And before we do that, though, Bull, can you talk a little bit about rebalancing? Because we're all about long-term growth, and along with being technology focused, one of our big pillars is
For sure.
rebalancing.
And so we'll definitely have more episodes on rebalancing and diversification and all of that. But in essence, what rebalancing does is keeps your portfolio, quote unquote, in balance. And by doing that, so let's say, we mentioned we have Reddit and we have MongoDB. Let's say Reddit shoots up, 100% and it goes from 5% of our portfolio to 10% of our portfolio. Meanwhile, MongoDB shoots down 50% and goes from 5% of our portfolio to 2% of our portfolio, or whatever the case is. One stock goes up, one stock goes down. Generally, everyone knows the mantra, buy low, sell high. So what rebalancing does is, in order to get back in balance, let's say we want both of those stocks at 5% of our portfolio, we would be trimming Reddit or selling high, and we'd be buying MongoDB or buying low, right? And generally, over the long term, if you do this to stay in balance, you will be buying low and selling high. And this works not just within a stock portfolio, but across asset classes too. So for example, if you're invested in stocks, real estate, and cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin, has the run of its life, and meanwhile your house lost some of its value, or vice versa, you can rebalance within asset classes as well. It's a great strategy to make sure that you're always making a smart decision.
Yeah, it really is, and that's the strategy we use. It is very it works very well for, again, long term growth, and because we're investing in technology stocks and we're able to be aggressive with the stocks that we choose, the rebalancing kind of almost balances it out and allows our money to grow. So anyway, now we can get into a little bit about our semiconductors.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of discussed, you and I, before, like what a semiconductor does or how it works. And I think a lot of people understand that computers are just ones and zeros. It's either on or off, and it's a bunch of on or off switches. And that's really what a semiconductor is at a very, very small level. They're using all this crazy science to make billions and billions of on and off switches on a little computer chip. And depending on whether this switch is turned on and that switch is turned off, and this switch is wherever position all the switches are in, that is a different state that tells that chip to do XYZ. So everything that's electronic has a semiconductor in it, from your cell phone to your laptop to even the fan I just turned off in my room. There's a semiconductor telling that you need to be on or you need to be off. So everything electronic has semiconductors in them, but obviously the more complicated electronics have more complicated semiconductors. And that's really what we're going for with NVIDIA and AMD. So those two are companies that design semiconductors, and we can talk about each part of the industry, but those are probably two of the most popular semiconductor companies because they're known for the semiconductors that they design. But there's also companies that actually build the semiconductors they design. But we can talk about maybe a little bit about NVIDIA and AMD first.
Yeah, and as Bull said, it can be a misconception for companies like NVIDIA that they're doing all of the work. They're designing, they're manufacturing it, they're doing everything, but that's not the case. NVIDIA and companies like NVIDIA and AMD actually design and sell the chips that we use, but we'll talk about other companies as well that are actually making those chips. And it's a whole ecosystem that has to work
For
together.
sure.
But let's talk a little bit about NVIDIA, which has really been, doing great as a company as far as the growth from where it started. And for people that have been following it, you can remember when NVIDIA was not a household name, but it was still around. But now it's a very popular stock for those that are investing in
Yeah,
stocks.
and I would say, 15 years ago, NVIDIA was, I mean, really cool fact is NVIDIA made the first graphics processing unit, or pretty much anytime you play a video game that has 3D graphics, that's using what's called the GPU, and NVIDIA made the very first one. So their main business has always been gaming or making gaming cards. So a lot of computers, like if you go into the computer aisle at your computer store or wherever, you'll see a lot of NVIDIA, and AMD is also very focused on gaming as well. But they're both of their businesses have evolved, right? And NVIDIA is pretty much making chips for any cutting edge technology. So we have obviously, right now, AI is huge, but also self driving, quantum computing, pretty much any cool technology that you can think of. NVIDIA is somehow making the chips that power that technology. And AMD is right there with them. NVIDIA's, I'd say, has a head start in a lot of these areas, but AMD is definitely playing catch up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it seems like, I don't know. Tell me what you think about this, bull. But I kind of feel like Nvidia is more positioned for the AI boom, and AMD seems like they have more of a lane for gaming.
So that's a good point where, for I'd say like 5 years ago, there was AMD. I think they were in the PlayStation, and like Nvidia wasn't really, uh, I guess, outperforming in the gaming market. But that's because they were spending all this time and energy investing in what they saw coming, which was the AI market. So NVIDIA, once this AI boom started, they were way ahead of anyone else in the chip market. So, there's, for the past few years, NVIDIA's had like 90% of the AI chip market share. Now, of course, as other companies realize the opportunity and they invest and do all their own research, they're catching up, but NVIDIA still has a massive share of this AI chip market. And between NVIDIA and AMD and all the other companies in the area, they like can't meet the demand. It's not like, oh, NVIDIA versus AMD and one's gonna win. It's like everybody's gonna win, bro. Like there's no losing in this market right now.
Yeah, I mean, because it really is the future. With AI and with these chips and how technology is growing, and that's one of the reasons why, Nvidia, AMD are two of our they're two of the biggest stocks in our
Right.
portfolio as far as the percentage of our portfolio, because we believe in it a lot. But moving on to some other semiconductor stocks, can you talk a little bit about some of the companies that are actually making the
Yeah,
chips outside of just designing them, like TSM and
for
LRCX?
sure. So there's a few levels to the semiconductor industry, and we've already talked about the designers who, like I said, they do a lot of complicated science to figure out what type of electrons and transistors and wherever things should be on the chip, but they're not actually spending the big bucks on the equipment to make the chips because it's very expensive to get this equipment. So there's the equipment manufacturing companies. So like you said, LRCX makes the massive $50 billion machines that you need to do this complicated science. Or other companies are ASML, um, which is this Dutch company that makes something called lithography machines, which I don't even know what that means, but again, it's a very complicated machine that you need to do the science that they're doing. And there's a few other equipment manufacturers like Applied Materials. AMAT is their ticker, AMAT. And these guys sell that equipment to a company mainly called TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, which you probably heard a lot about in the news, because it's probably the most important company in the world. Because yes, NVIDIA and AMD are designing these chips, but they send all those designs to TSMC, who then actually has all the very, very expensive equipment to make these chips. So, that's why there's a lot of talk about China, what happens if China invades Taiwan, what happens to, the chip manufacturing in the world, because literally practically every company in the world is somehow dependent on TSMC. And I like to say, semiconductors are in everything. So they're like, during the gold rush, not everyone found gold, but the people selling picks and shovels were sure to do well. And so it's like the people designing semiconductors are selling picks and shovels, right, to the gold rush, whether that's the AI gold rush or the self-driving gold rush or whatever. They're selling the picks and shovels.
Yeah.
And then companies like TSMC and LRCX are selling the picks and shovels to the picks and shovels. So maybe that's like they're selling the wood to make the handle or something like that. But like, these guys are all really crucial. This entire industry is crucial to pretty much everything that we're doing in our world that involves technology today.
Yeah, the picks and shovels is a great example, because it's industries within industries that are being created from this. Like, so even, for example, comfort systems, one of their big reasons for coming around is that in order to create these, to manufacture semiconductors, it requires a certain environment as far as temperature and the air quality and how clean it has to be, and just different systems. And they're stepping in and providing that.
The more technology we develop, the more demand we're going to see for things to support that technology. And that comfort systems definitely is one of those.
Do your research on semiconductors. Keep up with this industry, even if you choose not to invest in it, because it's something that it probably will be around for a while.
And so we've been talking about very specific companies, but there are also ETFs that you can just get exposure to the industry in general, because like we've been saying, it's a very important industry. You probably don't want to miss out on it. So a very popular one is SMH, or almost like shake my head, but it's called the VanEck Semiconductor ETF, which obviously, just like most ETFs, they hold a basket of stocks in that industry. So you would get, maybe you don't care about owning specific semiconductors, NVIDIA or AMD or this, but that definitely gives you a good way to get exposure to what we're talking about, which, like Bear said, it is the future. It's been the past too. It's been a huge part of our lives for a while now. One thing I do want to talk about, though, is it's not like every semiconductor company is a great company. The way we've been talking about the different parts of the industry where you have the people selling the equipment, TSMC making the actual semiconductors, and NVIDIA and AMD designing it, you actually have very popular company, Intel, tried to do it all, right? They tried to design the semiconductors, and they tried to literally make them in their foundry as well. And Intel has been struggling, while NVIDIA and AMD are growing revenue at 50, 60, 100%. Intel's revenue has been declining, right? Companies like Google or Apple or Microsoft, they build their own chips. So, like, for example, Apple used to use Intel's chip in the iPhone, but like I said, Intel was slacking. So Apple said, hey, it makes more sense, since we know exactly what we need this chip to do, and we know exactly what the requirements are and what it's going to be like in our iPhone. We're going to bring this in-house. Now, Apple has 50 other companies' chips in their phone too, so it's not like they make all their semiconductors, but they figured their most important chips they're going to make in-house. And we're definitely seeing that a lot more as these bigger companies kind of realize how important this is going to be. And that's what people say is NVIDIA's biggest threat, is companies like Google or Facebook or whatever taking it in-house. I don't think it's a real threat, but we can talk about that another time maybe.
Yeah, no, I think it's like anything when you are super focused and super
Right.
skilled and you are one of the frontiers of an industry, you definitely have leverage there and you can have some staying power if you stick with the
For
script.
sure, for sure.
But some companies don't stick with the script. They once they get big and it gets popular, they start switching up things and cutting corners, and that's when you can get into
For sure.
trouble. But yeah, this is a good discussion on semiconductors. We will, throughout this season, we'll have other episodes about our portfolio and how it's growing. We'll also have other episodes about different stocks that are not even in our portfolio and just the stock market in general, where we're doing deep dives on companies, their backgrounds, their CEOs, and just different things going on in the stock market and investing in general. So definitely stay tuned for that. But for now, we do want to, before we end every show, get a little off topic and just talk about something random, something that we're thinking about. So let's jump into off topic. All right, so let's jump into off topic. So for off topic, like I said, we just get off topic and just talk about whatever comes to mind.
Correct. So we have about 78 topics here. I'm going to generate a random number from 1 through 78, and then we'll choose our favorite one out of 3. So the first number is 18, which is holidays are just a money grab. That's correct. The next one is 59, which is who's keeping candy bars in business? They're ridiculously expensive. And then the next one is 7, which is the voting age should be raised. Personally, I like the voting age should be raised as a discussion
Yeah, I
point.
kind
What
of
do you
like
like?
that one too. That was interesting.
Okay. So before we get into it, what is your opinion on that? Should the voting age be raised or no?
I think so, but I'm on the fence about. I definitely think it should be raised from 18. I think that's a little ridiculous, but I'm on the fence between whether it should be raised to 21 and 25.
I also agree with you that it should be raised from 18, but I think a lot of things should be raised from 18. I don't think you should be able to go off and fight for your country at 18, because I remember who I was at 18, and I was an idiot who, like, especially young men are still maturing. They still have a lot to learn. And I definitely think that voting is a huge responsibility and has, a massive impact on our society. I don't think that an 18-year-old has the decision-making capability to fully understand what that means to go into the military and risk your life, or be taking someone else's life or something like that. But since we're talking about voting, I do think uh, obviously I think both of us, we probably have a certain way we lean politically, and the way I lean politically, I think, does benefit from younger people voting. Um, but I do think, in general, not even just age, I think there should be more structure to voting in general, which some people might not think is a very popular opinion, but I don't think literally everyone should be able to vote.
Yeah, no, that's a. I mean, yeah, we can get into that too. Before we, because that's probably a even more controversial section of the topic. But I'm for it. The 18-year-olds are people who, for the most part, right? They're people that are not yet working, at least on a full time career. They may be doing a part time job or something, but for the most part, they're probably not working. They're probably either in a senior in high school, or
Right.
or a freshman in college, or somebody who's starting their very first full-time job. And to me, they haven't had enough experience at life. Even if you make the argument where you're like, well, I didn't go to college, I started working when I was 16. Okay, cool. But one, that's a very small percentage of those people in America, and the people that are doing it, you still don't have a lot of life experience.
I think what we really do need is people who, one, have an investment in the country, and I don't mean a monetary investment. I mean, like, they pay taxes, or they, they're
They're
relying
contributing
on
to society.
exactly. But then also, I just know, again, I know who I was at 18 and what I cared about and what was important to me. and it wasn't necessarily politics or whatever. So I understand that there definitely are mature 18-year-olds out there. I'm not saying every 18-year-old's an idiot, but I'm just saying that on average, the average 18-year-old, especially the average young 18-year-old man, is not in a position to be making decisions about the future of the country. Now, what that age should be, I'm not 100% sure. I think science says like 25 is when your brain is fully developed. And at 25, you have the experience. You probably have a job. You've probably been paying taxes, etc. Um, but I don't know. What do you think the age should be?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it actually should be 25, but I could see the argue. Like, I think 25, 21 would be easier to argue, I would say. Like, if we were really trying to
For sure.
get it changed, I think 21 would be way easier to try to argue and make happen.
It sounds bad to say, oh, maybe there should be a test or something. Can I say that? Or is that bad? That's
um, I mean,
bad.
it's definitely on the line. I'll say that, but I think I think everyone should be able to vote, but I do see your point because I do think that I do think there should be some type of process to
There's
voting.
there should be some way for us to know that the person voting understands what they're voting for. If we had a better, informed public, then that would definitely change the way that we vote on things. But I think a lot of people are really not that well informed.
Yeah, and the test, I actually would be the test isn't a bad idea, but this is how I think it would have to be done a certain way. So I would see it as like in order to, whenever it's time to vote, you have to basically take a course. Like everybody is given an opportunity to take a course to kind of a quick course to kind of get a basic understanding of what they're voting for and how the process works. And then you take a test, but I think it would have to be where you have unlimited tries at the test. I don't think
Sure.
it's a like if you fail you can't vote. Like I think it's like hey you just got to keep taking a
or
course
or
until
maybe
you
your
can
vote
take
just
the
counts
test.
a little bit less or something.
No.
But I realize, so I mean, I know we're just playing, because if we were to actually try and do this, it it'd be so controversial, and it'd be such a, I mean, this is what they did in the past to keep certain people from voting. So like,
Yeah.
it definitely, if we could do it properly, then maybe it'll work. But I guarantee that one side or the other would take advantage in a way that they shouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust. I would not trust
No.
our government to
No.
do that fairly. I think more so it should be. I think really the biggest thing I would be trying to push for is like, hey, make voting make the whatever you're voting for in the different policies, like make it easier and simpler for the average voter to understand. Because even somebody like who researches, like I try to research
Yeah.
before I vote, and it's still like it still can get kind of sticky with how they word
Yeah.
stuff.
And I think, and this isn't necessarily about the voting age or anything, but I think one of the main issues today is that we're voting for people and not policies. So there's a lot of people who, like I brought up the transgender thing before, they might feel a certain way about that. You should be able to vote for that. Like, I am for or against this idea. I am for or against this idea. And then those are the policies that get enacted. Versus today, we vote for a person who has 100 different beliefs, and I align with 60 of them. But then, like, some of them are like, I'm not really on, but I still have to either vote for this person or that person. And I think especially today with technology, right? Because 300 years ago, when this country first got independence or whatever, there wasn't the technology to do this type of thing, and you did have to have someone that represented you. But today, with technology and blockchain voting and all that stuff, if there's some policy we want a decision on across the country, we could get everyone's vote on that policy, you know, by tomorrow, pretty much. So I don't think we need the same sort of system that we've had for 300 years.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely needs to be revamped because right now, politics in general is just who has the deepest pockets,
Oh,
and
for
that's how
sure.
you get on the platform. I think it would be cool. I had an idea where for these debates, like instead of it being where they're actually speaking, I think it'd be cool if they had it to where you had to actually type out your response because that's harder to finesse. Like if I ask you a
Right.
question, you have to just answer it and type it, and then I'm gonna send it out what your answer is, and then
Right.
we can compare both without somebody being interrupted and you trying to put all this gloss on it. I can just see how
Yeah.
you feel about the issue.
But the issue there is that a lot of people don't like reading, and I mean
Well,
that's probably. But I
it
agree
goes
with you,
back to
man.
your point of should everybody be voting? Like if you
I
don't
mean,
feel like you don't take time to read, should you really be voting?
I don't know.
But
It's not popular, but
oh man. But anyway, I think no, I think that's a good time to wrap it up. So
for sure.
you wanna close us out?
Yeah, before we say anything, I guess it's in trouble. Thank you for joining us, guys. That's all we have for you today. And just remember,
This is all just for Stocks and Giggles.
okay.